Good morning. It's a totally different perspective when you're sitting close up to look this way and see how many wonderful people are here today. I want to thank Megan Murphy for inviting me to be here, and it's really a huge privilege. By way of a little bit more introduction about myself, I am a Superior Court judge here in Yakima County. I've been on the bench for 22 years. The last 4 years I've spent as the juvenile court judge, and I will beg my presiding judge for at least 1 more year in juvenile court, and quite frankly I would gladly spend the rest of my career in juvenile court because it's such an incredible place to be. And our belief is that if we can save even one child, all the effort we put into it is well worth it. Chris has already explained to you a little bit about our gang court, and I very much want to explain more of that to you. We started our Yakima County Gang Court in June. One of our great administrators in the court system had an idea. We have drug courts all over the nation. Why couldn't we start a gang court? We thought about it for about 5 minutes, and we said, this is a no-brainer. Of course we're going to do it. We spent a total of about 3 weeks thinking about it, and we jumped right in. I want to tell you that we all, the whole community, needs to be very proud of what we're doing, because the Yakima County Gang Court is the first gang court in the nation. So we should all be very, very proud. The gang court participants go through a very intensive period of supervision that we anticipate will last 1 year. During the participation, each week, every child comes to court before me. We discuss their progress, what's going on in their life, and how we can better assist them. Prior to the gang court sessions, we have a staffing with all of the treatment providers that are helping us with the children. We take a very holistic approach to what's going on. We believe very strongly that it takes a village to raise a child, and what we have done is we have brought together all of the treatment providers, educators, therapists, drug and alcohol counselors, MST, faith-based organizations, so many I can't even name them all. And we coordinate services. And it's an informal meeting, and we share what's happened in that child's life during the previous week and where the child may be going the next week. And I get incredible feedback because when I get into court later, I'm the one that has the interaction with the child. And believe me, if I don't know everything that's going on in that kid's life, all the stresses, all the pressures, I won't have any credibility. So I get very involved with the children. I get very emotionally concerned about the kids, but that's the only way it can work. The therapeutic aspect of this court is huge. And so far, we're having some miraculous results. MST plays a huge role in what we're doing. And in fact, the idea of MST, a holistic approach, which looks at the family in the context of the community, fits perfectly into what we're doing in gang work. Because for the first time with these kids, we're not just treating one little piece of them at a time. We're looking at them as young people in a community that controls and affects their entire being. One interesting thing about gang kids, and believe me, Yakima has a huge gang problem, and I don't know the percentage of the gang members in the community that are actually children, and by children I mean under 18. But it's a huge, huge number. And people wonder why kids get into gangs. And most people assume that they get into gangs because they want to belong to something. Maybe they're having trouble transitioning into a new culture. Many of their parents are monolingual. The kids look to each other in lieu of family ties. And that used to be what we thought motivated kids. But what I'm starting to realize is that's not the only motivation. And in fact, perhaps the greater motivation has to do with their need for control and to be controlled. And for many of the children, the dysfunction in their own homes is so severe that there is no control. They're not being controlled, and they don't feel like they have any control over the situation in which they live. So what we're trying to do is empower the children and empower the families to take control, to help us control the behavior. One of the things that, or two of the things, I guess, that MST does that are so relevant to what we're trying to do in gang court, and Chris touched upon these, are empowering families, kids, but especially their guardians or their parents, empowering them to be able to take responsibility, to take control over the situation in their homes. And the second is sustainability. What happens when gang court's over? What happens when MST has run its course? I want you to know that I've had children go through MST with their parents who beg to get back in for another 4 months, another 6 months. They want the same therapist again. They become so bonded and have come to rely so much on the help that MST gives them that it's remarkable and sometimes heartbreaking because we're not able to do that. The resources are, well, there just aren't a lot of resources. Chris talked about their caseload. I mean, they're available 24 hours, 7 days a week for 4 to 6 months. You can't have a very high caseload when you're working so intensely with families. Anytime there's a crisis, night or day, an MST therapist goes to the home, sits down, works out the problem with the kid and the family, sometimes spending hours at a time working out situations. It could happen in the middle of the night, and the MST therapists are there to help pick up the pieces and to try to keep control of the situation and empower the parents and let the children speak about what's happening in their lives. Just a quick story, because stories are always kind of fun. We have a little boy in gang court who's now 12, just barely. He started his career in crime, I think, when he was about 9. When he first came to court, first came to the attention of law enforcement, he was too young to be prosecuted. He was being used by gang members because he was so tiny that they could boost him through little windows, say a little bathroom window. He was so little. He'd squeeze himself through and then open the door, and the older gang kids who were burglars would go in and rip off the houses, and they called it jacking. So they would go out and jack a bunch of property and then steal it. And of course, the little guy didn't get any cut in anything, but he became their mascot. Later on, he kept committing his burglaries with other gang kids, finally got prosecuted. Now he just turned 12 and he has a number of felonies on his record. He has been affiliated with gangs since he was tiny, as I indicated, and we got him into gang court. We do this thing called a risk assessment. It's a program that's done by probation departments all over the state of Washington. And it's a very in-depth interview process with family, community, school, therapist, the child. And what we try to do is assess the risk that a child is faced with for reoffending. And we also look at protective factors, things in their life that are good, that tend to keep them safe. The higher the risk factor, as you might imagine, the greater the chance that the child will reoffend. The higher the protective factors, the less of a chance the child will reoffend. When this little boy started gang court, and he'd had prior risk assessments, because you get one every time you go into probation. And by the way, with our gang kids, we're going to do a risk assessment 4 times while they're in gang court so that we can monitor what we're doing and whether it's helping. When this little boy started in gang court, and we started in June, his risk factor level was 166. extremely high. We just did a new analysis of this little boy. His risk factors are now 62. His protective factors, which if they're low, they're bad. If they're high, they're good. Protective factors were approximately 30, extremely low. His protective factors now are in, I can't remember the exact numbers on this, but his protective factors now are in the high 60s. This child has made an amazing turnaround, and MST has been an active participant, along with the gang court, to try to empower this family and to help this child find his way. A couple of weeks ago, his probation officer went to visit him, and he's just the cutest little kid. I always thought he would be one of the hardest nuts to crack because he's been involved in it for so long. He went to his room, and he said, "Owens, I want to give you something." And Owens said, "Okay." So the kid brought out some red bandanas, some red shoelaces, and he said, "I don't need these anymore. I'm leaving the game for good." He didn't have to do that. He wasn't asked to do that. Complete turnaround. About 4 weeks ago, a young man who has a terrible, terrible felony record and is now 15 begged to get into gang court. And I didn't think that he was the kid that would really benefit. I didn't really think that he was being honest and sincere. And quite frankly, I told him I didn't think he was going to be accepted. Well, he was in detention. He wrote me a very, very personal letter begging me to let him in. He said as far as he was concerned, he was out of gangs immediately. That he was afraid that there would be retaliation against him and his family. But if we could help him, he thought that he could do it. And one of the neatest things about that letter was, remember the little boy, at that time he was 11, the little boy who's been so involved in everything and who's in gang court now. He said, "I started him. I got that little boy involved in gangs." And he said, "I'll never get over it. I'll never forgive myself for doing that, and I can be his mentor. I can help him. I want to be in gang court, and I want to be part of the team, and I want to mentor him." And he has. And he's having a wonderful effect on this little boy. He's having a wonderful effect on the other kids. MST has helped the little boy's family. The mother, who was basically overwhelmed and powerless by his aggression, by his gang involvement, is now a totally different person. She's been empowered, she's stronger, he feels more at home, he feels more controlled by his family. He's working the program very well, and before, when I didn't think he had a chance, now I really think he has a good chance. I think he's going to make it. We're going to save him. We're going to save the other little boy who got him started. We're going to save a lot of these kids. And even if only one kid gets saved, it'll be worth every effort that we're putting into this. So I want to, and hopefully have conveyed to you, that as a community we should be extremely proud of the gang court program. It's serving as a model to counties all over the United States. We recently had a group of judges from Houston come to visit us. They're going to start a program. We've had legislators come from the west side of the state, and I've personally been invited to write some legislation to try to set up in the revised Code of Washington a mechanism whereby gang courts can more formally get started. And I'm very honored by that. I also want to tell you from the very bottom of my heart that the MST program, multi-systemic therapy, is one of the best tools that we have in this community to empower families and to, with a lot of effort and a lot of hope, help the families sustain what they're able to gain during our involvement with them. So I can't tell you enough about how important MST is. And I guess I just want to thank Chris for bringing it in and allowing us to be benefited by the MST program because it's absolutely amazing.